Ladies and gentlemen, I stood here Tuesday and I told y'all this is a murder case. It's still a murder case. This is the clearest murder case that I've ever been a part of. You have Kameron Williams shooting his friend in the back 7 times. You have Kameron Williams starting an entire altercation over trash talking and then murdering his friend. Let me just kind of go over what you saw, and then I'll tell you why it's even clearer than that. The first witness we called was Jalen Glass. And you understand this was over 2 years ago. So it's easy to get up here now and tell a version of what happened 2 years ago, because it gives me time to think about it. But the reason some of these witnesses, even though it's all on video, the reason these witnesses are so important is because they actually spoke to everyone on the scene the day it happened, or 2 days after. We called Jalen Glass. Jalen Glass was the first responding patrol officer. Says he arrives on the scene, sees Patrick Coleman, who you did not get to hear from because, unfortunately, he was killed. He doesn't have a voice. He wasn't able to tell you what happened. So he sees Patrick Coleman dead in a yard, tries to provide a calls EMS. I have to see this individual here. He's then told there's another individual that's been shot. That was Kameron Williams. He makes contact with Kameron Williams. He sees his brother Shamar holding his foot with a t-shirt. Calls EMS, gets him into the ambulance, and he asks right then, this is the first time Kameron Williams ever gives a version of anything that happens. He says, "What happened?" Kameron never tells him about going to his car and getting a gun or having a gun on him. All he says is, "I get in an argument with my friend, we're shooting basketball." Let me tell you exactly what he says. "I was playing basketball on Martin Street, gambling for money. Patrick and I began to argue about gambling bets. Shortly thereafter, Williams said he walked away from Coleman because of his threats. Coleman never made any threats. The only threat y'all heard was, 'I'll slap you with some money.' Cameron says, 'I walked away from him after some threats.' He said Coleman started back arguing over some issues, reached for a firearm off an unknown male. Williams said, 'I got scared and shot him.' Now, a lot of that is true. Now, he leaves out the fact that he blew this entire thing up by getting a gun in the first place. Defense counsel made a statement at his opening. He said, Cameron got a gun to calm everything down. That is literally the opposite of what getting a gun does. Friends are arguing over sports bets. You give a gun, and now everyone's fighting. And the one man who is dead, who had a right to defend himself, tries to get a gun and he murders him. But he never in that statement said, which is what he testified to 2.5 years later, he never said to Patrick Coleman shot first. He never said he heard a gunshot and that's why he killed him. He never said any of that. He said when Rudy went to get a gun, I shot him. That's a very important, truthful statement. That is murder. You then heard from Nick Carson, who was able to pull the surveillance video, and I'm not going to play that for y'all again. You've seen it 100 times. But you see exactly what happened. When you watch that surveillance video, and all the testimony lines up with it, friends are shooting basketball. One of them says, "I'll slap you with some money." Cameron takes that, and he's pissed because he's been losing at basketball. statements from all the individuals, which turned out to be significant. Daniel Harris took all these crime scene photos about all of the shell casings. That's fantastic. But at the same time, we all know there was a shooting. Not one person in the school was died. So a lot of these other witnesses just confirm what we already know. Eddie Colbert took gunshot residue on Kameron Williams. Dave Whitehead said, yeah, he had gunshot residue on him. Cameron's admitted he shot. Those are simple things to show. He called the medical examiner, and to me, I think she's probably the most important witness. When you look at the photos, originally when I saw autopsy photos, I thought the holes in the front of Patrick's body was where he was shot in the front. I thought, well, he shot in the front, maybe it was a shootout. And then you look at the actual autopsy and they tell you, no. Every single bullet hole in that man's body was from the back. And those holes in his front are exit wounds from a bullet. There was no shootout. There is no self-defense. It's a murder. The only person with self-defense who had a right of self-defense is dead. Cameron cannot start an argument with a gun, shoot someone when they try to harm themselves, and then say, I had to defend myself. I can't break in Mike's house. Mike get a gun to stop me, and I kill Mike, said, well, I was defending myself. I started. If you listen to Kameron Williams testify, he even says, because he has to come up with a reason, because he knows what he did to her. 2 years later, he has to come up with a reason. He says, when they reached for the gun, it went off. And when it went off, I shot him. That's what he says 2 years later, but he never said that the day. You heard from Kameron Williams, who's Cameron's brother. And I asked him, he's the only one who admitted that Cameron was smoking weed, Shamar was smoking weed, everyone was smoking weed, and I don't even care about that. They brought up the toxicology of Rudy. Okay, guess what? He had alcohol, he had weed, he probably did some ecstasy. They were all friends since high school. They all hung out every day. I think it's absurd to think that he's Rudy, the one who's dead, and can't come in here and defend himself because he was murdered by Cameron. They're going to attack his toxicology. When I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if Rudy was doing it, they're probably all doing it. Cedric Hall, his brother, lied. He said he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke weed. Well, I called his other brother and I said, now it's my understanding all of y'all were drinking, all of you were smoking weed. He goes, oh yeah. I said, thank you for your honesty. They're all doing it, they're all smoking weed, they're all doing drugs. But the thing that you talk about toxicology, when you watch the video, they're just shooting basketball. It's not like Patrick Coleman is a maniac running around trying to kill people. They're constantly betting on a basketball game. It doesn't turn violent until he gets to it. So the drugs and the alcohol, that is there to misguide and mislead and cover up the true story, which is sins. You talk about Cameron and the story that he's back to Shamar. At the very end of Shamar's testimony, I asked him 2 questions. I said, do you agree with me if Kameron Williams had not gotten that gun, y'all would be shooting basketball today? He said, maybe so. And then when I slowed that video down and I showed him the picture where Cameron shot him in the back 7 times, I said, you're telling me you're watching that and you think that's self-defense? And he dropped his head. Y'all watched him. He's been talking to Cameron and hearing Cameron's version of the story for 2 years, but when he sees it in slow motion, he agrees. It's not self-defense, it's murder. Is it sad that we're here on a murder case? Absolutely. Is it sad that Kameron Williams is guilty of murder? Yes, it is. Do I think when he got that gun out, at that moment he thought, I'm going to go kill Patrick? No, I don't think he did. And I think he regrets it. But regretting it and initially not intending to do it doesn't make him not guilty. same one he told Jailer Glass. First off, he lied about getting the gun out of the car. And when Gerald, and you heard it, White calls it, when Gerald said, "You never should have gone to that van to get the car," and he says, "I know." So now, he's finally admitted that what he did in that van, he didn't go charge his cell phone. He went and got his gun. You see it in the video. But the next thing he says, and he says it 3 times, y'all can listen to the statement. He says it 3 separate times. He said, "When Patrick reached for the gun, I shot him." That's murder. Patrick had a right to harm himself. If Mike pulls a gun on me, I have a right to get a gun. And when I go to get it, and he shoots me, it's murder. Something else in that interview, Nick Carson looks at Kameron Williams, and he says, "I've warned you about this before. You keep pulling guns, somebody ends up dead." And Cameron says, "I know you have." Nick Carson looked at it. You keep pulling your gun, you're going to end up dead, or you're going to end up here. I've been warning you. And guess what? Nick was right. He pulls his gun, he starts an argument with his friend. His friend since high school over a sports bet. And what happens? Nick was right. His friend ends up dead. You cannot come in here 2 years after starting an altercation with your gun, shoot your friend 7 times in the back, and say, "I was defending myself." The initial aggressor cannot defend himself. He started it, and he murdered his friend.
Can't do that. Let me see.
It's always the case. It is always the case in the state of Mississippi, in fact, in the United States of America, that the state has the burden of proof. It is never the defendant, in this instance, it's not Kameron Williams. upset because the friend acted irrational. You know, he's upset about it. But he's not lying. He gave the best statement he could under the circumstances when he gave. And it was after, when everything's cooled off, he has legal counsel to explore it more. Hey, the gun came out, boom. And that's when James Allen, his gun, that's when he's testified. That's when he told the police. They didn't put him on it. I mean, that doesn't support their case. And they didn't put on any of those other about a dozen people who lived there for that whole time, in and out of the whole thing. They didn't put them on. Shamar Williams, brother, I put him on. Shamar says that the Patrick Cole threatened the life of his brother. When he tried to get him to go, put him in the car, he got out of the car, he came back, he went like this, right there in front of Shamar Williams. You can't hear it, all you can see. But he testified that's what happened. Now, the gunshot residue analysis, to me, it was a waste of time. This thing happened in June 2023, they sent it off for analysis in 2024. Why? Who's arguing the fact that both these guys had guns? No, but we got the video. But you know what's kind of telling? They didn't ask for the Patrick Coleman's GSR. They only asked for Kameron Williams. Why? It's obvious to me. I've been doing this 45 years. It's obvious to me it's going to be gunshot residue on both those guys' hands. But they want that analysis. Why? They come and tell you this means something. And Dave White has done that a long time. I've seen it many times. I've actually, questioned it several times from the witness. He's a good guy. He knows what he's doing. But, he only does what he's asked to do, and this is only on Kameron Williams. I'm not a hacker. If you think you gotta have to do it, why not a hacker? What are you trying to prove? And in this statement that Sergeant Hayes took of my client, he doesn't ask him, well, who shot first? He doesn't ask that. He asks very deep questions. And all it does is just let Kameron Williams talk. He says what's important is what he feels at the moment. He was afraid. If you hear a gunshot, that's going to make you pretty afraid. It doesn't mean you're going to spell it all out, but if he'd been properly interrogated, yes, he would have spelled it all out. And they put Lieutenant Carson up here on the witness stand about the video. Why didn't they ask him about what he told Kameron Williams 12 hours later down at the police station? He didn't mention anything about that. You never heard anything about that statement from Lieutenant Carson. You did from Sergeant Hayes. He did say that to the state, but he didn't say anything about what he said. They waited to the end after my client had already taken the witness stand, already been cross-examined, and then they put this on
this case comes down to who was the initial aggressor. Don't believe the lies, believe your eyes. Now, Mr. Perry just told me there were no eyewitnesses that was called to the stand in this case. You all have eyes, you all have witnessed. We're in day 3 of this trial, and you all have witnessed what occurred. Now, we're getting ready to turn this case over. Y'all heard from a lot of the lawyers, the witnesses. It's getting ready to be your case. You all are getting ready to go in that jury room. And when you go in that jury room, just like the court instructed you to, take your common sense. You know what you were saying. You know what you were saying. You take your common sense in that jury room. Don't believe the lies, believe your eyes. Now, you've heard testimony in this case from Kameron Williams himself. He admitted that he was the only one with a gun during most of this situation. You all have seen that on the video. He was the only one parading around with a loaded firearm for over 10 minutes. Nobody else had a gun out. Now, there were some other individuals that had guns, but no one had it out but Kameron Williams. Now, Patrick Colby, he didn't even have a gun at all. He didn't have a gun at all. But Kameron Williams paraded around with a loaded weapon. So, what Mr. Perry wants you to believe is that the man with 7 bullet holes in his back was the initial aggressor, and not the man that approached the scene, introduced the firearm to the situation, a loaded firearm in that situation, assaulted the Patrick Colvin, who's now deceased. He wants you to believe that he was not the initial aggressor. That's nonsense. Believe your eyes. Don't believe the lies. Now, y'all watch this video a lot, and I'm going to play a portion of it again because it's important. It's extremely important.